9-5, Ugly 5 time here on Sports Bash on a Wednesday on 97.3 ESPN. Pete Thompson, Scott Grayson, Josh Hennig, all holding things down as Mike Gill enjoys that break between Christmas and New Year's. Sure, he didn't enjoy that West Virginia loss. That was definitely ugly.
That was ugly. Ugly does not define it.
If you're a Mountaineer alum or a Mountaineer fan. All right, let's get into this. Scott Grayson, since you don't do it a lot, we go ugly from 5 to 1. So 5 is the least ugly. 4, 3, 2, 1, with 1, of course, being the ugliest. And we'll do it the same way for the fines. The 5th fine, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st in that order. So I'll kick things off on the uglies. And I didn't have them in here last time. I'm starting with Denver at 5 and 10. I had San Francisco in the 5 slot the last time we did this, but San Fran, they're 4-0 with Jimmy Garoppolo, so they appear to be on the rise, at least a big of a rise enough to get out of the ugly 5. Meanwhile, Denver's quarterback issues continue to linger. Brock Osweiler, 22 for 38 for 193 yards, a fumble and an interception. Who knows what they have in Paxton Lynch? Their vaunted defense gave up 368 yards to the Redskins. They'll host a playoff team in the Chiefs on Sunday at 4:25, and we'll see apparently what Lynch can do in that game. But if this was like if you were the pilot, there would be warning bells going off all around the cockpit right now. Because this is a franchise, I went back and looked up the numbers. From 1986 on, they've basically been in the hunt every year, it seems. You take out 94, they went 7-9. They were 4th in the AFC West, which I believe is last. Take out 2010, they went 4-12, finished 4th again. That was the Josh McDaniels in 2010, the Josh McDaniels Eric Studsville year. What does your mind think when I say Eric Studsville? That's the reason that Denver is in the 5th position for me of the uglies.
Yeah, I had Denver as 5 as well. A lot of the same reasons, but you look at what happened against Washington. I mean, Washington's not a terrible team, but they're not a great team either, and they just got manhandled there. And you see Brock Osweiler at one point yelling at his offense to try to get something going when, I think it was him that made the mistake on the previous play. And so it seems just a little dysfunctional out there, and I believe they've lost 7 of their last 9 games. You look at games in that stretch where they, of course, got blown out by the Eagles, shut out by the Chargers. They did shut out the Jets, but what does that tell you? They're just struggling in every single way, and I agree with you. They were my number 5 team.
And we did not compare notes before the segment. Josh, you're 5th worst.
I am actually going with the Jets.
Okay.
Because I actually had 7 teams now I think about it.
Dr. Melwin would appreciate that. Big Jets fan.
Here's the thing with the Jets. You go to your backup quarterback every year. And every year you're an incompetent mess. It could be Josh McCown. It could be Ryan Fitzpatrick. It could be Geno Smith. Whoever the backup quarterback of the Jets is, behind those guys is abysmal, pathetic, and horrible, and you lost at home 14-7. I am so over the ineptitude of this roster. I could not blame Todd Bowles for the fact that he has nobody backing up his starters.
What happened to that run when they beat the Dolphins, Jaguars, and Browns in 3 consecutive weeks, and people were talking about Jets and playoffs? Those days are long gone, as Jim Morris said. Playoffs?
By the way, the reason I'm the Broncos in, I think they're going to win this Sunday.
Okay.
Because they're at home and they're playing Pat Mahomes.
Yes, that's true.
My 4 team is the Bears. 5 and 10 record. Jordan Howard, he's been a bright spot in an otherwise dismal season. Guys, if he runs for a touchdown in Week 17 in Minnesota, he'd become the first Chicago player with 1,000 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns in the season since Raymond Harris in 1997. That's how far you have to go back to find a productive Chicago back. But this team has a lot of problems, though, and Mitchell Trubisky might not be the answer. They get my 4 spot.
I was actually going with the Indianapolis Colts as my 4, just because they've got one of the worst records in the league, but they have been better in recent weeks. They took Baltimore and played them hard on the road this past week. They almost beat Buffalo in that driving snowstorm a couple weeks ago, and were right there until Shady broke I think it was either 4th down or 3rd down late in the game to win it. So Indianapolis, to me, has played decently the last few weeks. They did lose to Denver last week, not against Baltimore here this past Sunday,
Brock
but the week before.
Osweiler
Yes.
in the Denver Broncos, by the way.
Yes, is who we just talked about as one of the ugly fives, in my opinion. So I think Indianapolis is not, one of the top 3 worst. I put them at number 4.
See, I have a number 4 too. They're tied for the second worst point differential in the NFL. They are minus 150 on the season, but they do score some points. So I got to give them a tiny bit of credit for not being totally horrible. So they're my 4.
I've got them as 3. The Colts 3-12. I know it was windy and rainy in Baltimore. It was windy and rainy for the Ravens too, and they won the game. Colts did get as close as 16-13, like Scott talked about in the third quarter before the Ravens pulled away. The big thing for me is the Colts have lost 6 straight. They haven't done that since 2011 when they started that season out 0-13. Now, that season they drafted Andrew Luck after that season, and Luck's shoulder injury has been the biggest reason for their slide this season. So they get the 3 spot. The Colts do. Who's your 3, Scott Grayson?
I'm flipped with you. I have the Jets as my number 3 in the sense that, you're right. They can't get anything going no matter who they run out there at quarterback. Nothing works for them. They just lost to the Chargers in New York. Then they got beat by the Saints. Before that, they got shut out by Denver in Week 14. How bad is that? So it's just, I see the Jets as being the number 3 in my ugly 5.
Josh, you're number 3.
My number 3 is the Giants. They also are at minus 150 on the season. Listen, they played the Eagles at least interestingly close. So you got to give them credit for something, right?
I've got the Giants at 2. Their expectations were so high. That's why I have them at 2. This is a playoff team a year ago, and now Landon Collins is calling Eli Apple a cancer to the team. You want to talk about dysfunction, Scott? That's dysfunctionality from the word go. That's why I have the Giants at 2. Who's your 2?
I'm going with the Browns as my 2.
Oh, wow.
And because of some of what you just said, Pete, we'll get into, and I give my number 1. I think, the Browns are obviously terrible, but they don't have the kind of crap going on behind the scenes that the Giants are dealing with right now, and that's why I kind of moved them. I just think that there's so much going wrong up there in New York that for my, in terms of ugliness, when you think things are going to get better before they get worse, suddenly they get worse for New York. Cleveland, I think, is a little bit more to be excited about right now with so many high draft picks. They just haven't known how to do it and how to do the NFL draft. Maybe they'll get it right this time.
Josh, your 2 then is the Giants.
No, my number 3 was the Giants.
Oh, who's your 2?
My 2 is the Houston Texans.
Oh, wow.
You have a top 5 wide receiver, a top 20 running back, some decent players still left in your secondary, and you get destroyed by the Steelers and only score 6 points on a miraculous catch by DeAndre Hopkins in the end zone. This roster has been so poorly built by Rick Smith. It's an absolute joke. People talk about Bill O'Brien being fired. No, the GM needs to be fired because he has not always put a good product in Bill O'Brien's hands, and yet Bill O'Brien has still salvaged something from year to year.
Well, I thought we were all going to have Cleveland as our 1. Looks like not. Josh is Cleveland at 1.
Absolutely.
I'm Cleveland at 1.
Did you see Hugh Jackson today? He said that he asked the reporters at the press conference, so who's jumping in the lake with me?
By the way, do you guys remember that Cleveland went 4-0 in the preseason?
They did.
Just for everybody out there that thinks the preseason games mean something. All right.
The last time a team went 4-0 in the regular season, 0-16 in the regular season, 4-0 in the preseason, was your Detroit Lions.
That 2008, they're the only ones happy that Cleveland continues to lose. All right, fine 5 now, and of course.
Wait, hold on. So Scott, who did you have number 1? The Giants.
My number 1 is the Giants, just because you have a guy calling another guy a cancer in the locker room. On top of everything else that's going on there this season, it's just clearly ugly.
Thank you, Josh. I tried to move on too quickly. That's because I talked so much about the Denver Broncos. We're running out of time. I've got the Rams as my 5th best team. Tough win on the road in Tennessee. Jared Goff, 4 touchdowns. Totally different Jared Goff. Todd Gurley's a beast. Beat me in my fantasy league, too. That ticks me off. Rams, my 5th best team.
I agree with the Rams being 5. I mean, they've shown that they can blow teams like Seattle out of the water on the road, but then they come back and they struggle against a team like the Titans. So I kind of have them for various reasons, similar to yours, Pete, that they're my 5th team in the Fine 5.
The Rams ended up being my number 6. My number 5 is the Saints. I like the way they won on Sunday. They did it in an ugly manner. It wasn't an offensive explosion. I mean, that game was pretty penalty-filled. I think it was more yellow on the field than anything else. in that game. So I got to give the Saints a lot of credit for finding a way to win. They lost to the Falcons a couple weeks ago. They beat them this time. I give them number 5.
Climbing up the ladder to 4, I've got Minnesota there. Case Keenum continuing his magical season. Packers may not have had Aaron Rodgers, but they are NFL professionals. And the Minnesota D shut them out at Lambeau. That's the first shutout for Minnesota anywhere since '93. Their first shutout win over Green Bay since 1971. How long ago was that? That's the year I was born, so you know it's a long time ago. Minnesota D second in both points allowed and yards allowed. That gets them the 4 spot in my fine 5.
Yeah, I have the Vikings as number 4 as well. I just think that, every time you want to start giving this team a ton of credit, they just have that, Case Keenum throwing for 139 yards. It's not sexy, against Green Bay. In Green Bay, I know it was a cold day. It's you look at Case Keenum, and the guy has gotten his shot. He's doing what he needs to with it, but he's not getting the credibility for it. And I'm kind of one of them piling on in that respect. They have a good defense. It's a matter of whether or not their offense against some playoff caliber teams will be able to do what it needs to do. So I have Minnesota as my number 4.
Yeah, for a lot of the same reasons, I got Minnesota number 4 as well. This is arguably the second best defense in the NFL. You got to have them in there.
Are we Eagles, Steelers, Patriots? Are we all in unison on that, going 3-2-1?
I have Steelers at 3.
I have Steelers at 3 also.
How can you put the Steelers at 3 when the Eagles were so terrible against the
Well, here's why. Because to me, remember, the Steelers are still without Ryan Shazier. He's a huge part of that defense. And I think the loss of him is going to be blatantly obvious in the postseason when you're playing some very good teams. It's easy to beat the Texans and other teams without an elite linebacker, but you're not going to beat everybody that way. And listen, at least the Eagles got a couple guys who can fill in behind when Jordan Hicks went down. Nobody is filling in behind Ryan Shazier. He's that elite.
All right.
I think that really hurts the Steelers in my book.
So I have Eagles, Steelers, Patriots. You guys have a little flip-flop.
I have Steelers, Eagles, Patriots,
Same.
and I have Steelers 3 instead of the Eagles for the simple fact that, look, the Eagles still found a way to win. Their defense proved that it was back to more of its early season form, forcing those turnovers, really taking control of the game. And it's almost sort of like, in my opinion, until somebody knocks off the Eagles, it's kind of like, hey, they're finding ways to win. They could still stay there.
Hey, Scott, may I remind people? It was Ben Roethlisberger who threw an interception inside the 10-yard line, not Nick Foles.
Good point, Josh.
And you when you get to, in my opinion, the Patriots over the Eagles, large for that. You got Tom Brady there. You got Bill Belichick doing what they've been doing. They did find a way to beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And look, now they went and took James Harrison and signed him. I mean, to me, Belichick is the king of recycling talent.
I had that in my write-up, too. They add James Harrison. Belichick and company should work in Hollywood because their moves are right out of a good Hollywood drama. When have you had a defense that looks so bad in week 1 and looks respectable now by week 17? That's your fine 5, ugly 5 here on the Sports Bash at 97.3 ESPN.